Yes, we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient radio, live on the Worldwide Coalition Radio Network, on the web at coalitionradio.us, Facebook at facebook.com/the Coalition Radio, and of course on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. We are sponsored this week in a reduced commercial format by Beacon Shipping Logistics. Beacon Shipping Logistics, providing the most reliable auto transport service in the automotive shipping industry. Fastest pickup and delivery and extremely competitive rates. Beacon can ship any vehicle from motorcycles to tractor trailers to and from anywhere in North America and most international locations. Beacon Shipping Logistics, your source for transporting single vehicles to full truckloads. Our aim is to set the gold standard for service and dependability. Find them on the web at beaconshippinglogistics.com. Joining me in studio, the godfather of Rhode Island indie media, the pompous of love, 2014 Libertarian candidate for Lieutenant Governor of the great state of Rhode Island at Providence Plantations. Of course, I am talking to none other than Tony Jones. Tony, welcome back.
Great to be here, as always. My home away from home. It's great to be in this seat. And I got to take a second to congratulate you on a very successful convention last weekend. And that was a blast. I'm still, you know, in very few political movements can you be a week later still recovering from a convention. And I think that's the situation I'm in right now. It was just a great convention last week.
Well, we've been blessed this year to have a number of events at local venues. As Libertarians, it's important to us that we support locally owned businesses.
Right.
And that would go from last week we had at one of the Darty's restaurants, Darty's Old Irish Ale House on Warwick, right off of Jefferson Boulevard. You know, and we've had it at Brood Awakenings. We've had it at the Meadery. These are all local success stories. You need to embrace and support local business people.
My grandfather used to eloquently put it, I like to feed the pigs that I know.
Excellent. Well, we'd like to take this moment to thank the gods of live radio. Our special guest tonight is running a little bit late. Governor Gary Johnson is at actually a private memorial service for an associate. He will be joining us slightly later in the show. Filling in, doing, again, the yeoman's work of the Libertarian Party. Joining us on the line for the first time on the Coalition, of course, we've got Steve Kerbel. Steve was himself a Libertarian candidate for president. Actually was running in second place. Decided to suspend his candidacy and has actively been working with the Gary Johnson campaign, traversing, as the blowhard says on the EIB, across the fruited plain. But actually, in this case, spreading the gospel of the Libertarian movement. One of the hardest working men in the Libertarian Party. Welcome to the Coalition, Steve.
Hey, Pat. Hey, Tony. How you guys doing?
Great. Steve, you're seeing the campaign firsthand. You know, and it is, I'll call it an insurgency, if you will. It's a campaign. It's a movement. It's a philosophy. It's all these things rolled up into one, none of which can be found in really any of the other two national campaigns. Give us your sense of how the campaign is going, and particularly this weekend with the just the recent dramatic announcement of the addition of William Weld to the ticket.
Well, I got to say, this is some pretty exciting stuff. I mean, what I'm really enjoying is that I believe that 2016 is going to be the year when we really do move from a minor theoretical group to a major leader in the United States political landscape. And, you know, here is I am so happy. I can't thank the Republicans and Democrats enough for putting up the worst possible people.
True.
At the same time, when the rest of the country is yearning for something different. And now we're coming forward with a very powerful ticket, more than likely, that, you know, it's really going to be awesome because, you know, 6 months ago where people might not have heard of the Libertarian Party, I can promise you that come November, everyone's going to know who we are. And this is just fantastic.
You know, I spoke at the state convention to that very point where, you know, I signed on to be the state director for Gary Johnson before all this momentum took place, and I thought I'll set up a few websites, I'll make a couple of appearances, send out a couple of emails. You know, this will be, you know, a nice little volunteer opportunity between now and the end of the year, and it has turned into probably 40 hours plus a week here in Rhode Island.
Well, to me, what's fascinating is there's only one major candidacy that's offering a vision and hope and solutions. It would appear that the two other parties seem to be, as one of the other candidates once expressed years ago, It's the candidates are expressing the policies of personal self-destruction. Armed by a vast right, left, and center wing conspiracy, they seem hell-bent to drag this election as far down into the muck as possible. Do you sense? We're here in the Northeast. We've got our own little bubble here, our own little tunnel vision. Is the rest of the nation as disgusted and revolted by this as we are?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I think is so exciting is, even though it seemed like much of the media that's available to the people, they had basically kept us out. And what I'm loving right now is seeing, everywhere I go, Gary's all over the place, and it seems like he's already smashed through the barrier of these news networks that didn't want to include it. So basically, we've got a situation where the people, you hear people say, well, the population is easily fooled and the vote. No, they're not. They were specifically kept this information away from them. And so what's really exciting to me is that the voting public is going to see, our nominee and for president and vice president. They're going to see us out there, and they are all as disgusted as you are. Trust me, there's no question in my mind. This is a nationwide thing. I mean, certainly there's going to be a few small pockets of areas where people are like, oh, I like Hillary or I like Trump, but they're really not going to be that excited. And so this is why I just think that 2016, I can hardly wait to see how this thing pans out. But I can tell you from personal experience, I am very, very excited to be involved in this as well, because this is going to be a very historic year for American politics.
Speaking of excitement, here in Rhode Island, I've been contacted a lot this past week specifically, but in general, from a lot of college-age people that are excited about Gary Johnson. Could you speak to that a little bit? I don't know if you're seeing that across the country, but it seems like college-age kids and kids who just got out of college, they're really excited to have the opportunity for a legitimate alternative.
Well, they really are, because one of the nice things about college-age people is, for the most part, and they're paying attention to the world around them, and they're seeing the fact that for probably the first time certainly in my lifetime, each generation has more challenges than the one before it, and that is purely due to the collusion between the Republicans and the Democrats and the damage they've been doing to our nation for a very, very long time. So the college-age people, they're aware of this, and they're looking at something different. And so that's why they've been looking away from the mainstream, whether they are on the liberal side or whether they're just kind of opening up and looking around. What they're seeing is, okay, so they're recognizing a lot of the fallacies that people have embraced over the years. I mean, look at the drug war, for example.
Right.
I mean, that was just disastrous. I mean, how many more people have died from the drug war than from using the drugs themselves? And the kids are opening up their mind going, hey, wait a minute. Maybe it's really not up to government to dictate every last action that I do in my personal life that affects nobody else. And so, I really think what's happening is this is a nationwide thing. They want something different. It's up to us to show them all who we are, what we stand for, and give them the opportunity to make that decision. And my prediction is that the college-age folks and the ones who have just graduated from college are going to be a massive coalition for growth for the Libertarian Party and the future. And I think it's really going to be instrumental in bringing back the vision of the Founding Fathers that this country was started on, but it seems to have been forgotten for the last 100 years or so.
How do you see local parties reacting? Now, you're based out of Colorado. How do you see local parties reacting from the quote-unquote main to the big two parties? Are they nervous yet? Are they because what's stunning is early polls indicate that the combination of Johnson-Weld actually draws equally from Democratic and Republican voters. The more interesting dynamic, though, it also appears that these voters are much more motivated to show up that day, if you will, highly motivated voters, than at this point the Trumpistas and the Clintonistas. What's your take on that?
No question about it. What I'm seeing, and I'm also the chair of our local county party for the Libertarian Party here in El Paso County, Colorado, and I can tell you that we have seen explosive growth recently in our party, and we are seeing people reaching across from the other parties, sometimes activists from both parties, looking for a new home in our party. And this is really cool because this is kind of what we need. I think that they've pretty much realized that the other ones are running out of gas, and I think that the rest of the country is recognizing now that it is the elite that's controlling the masses, and the masses are not going to let that happen anymore. So we are seeing an equal pull from Republicans and Democrats, especially if you look, for example, if you look at the Monmouth poll. You know, I recognize this is not a county level, it's national level, but when it was Governor Johnson up against, you know, Trump and Clinton, he was polling equally, actually a little bit more from Clinton, which is great, you know, because that's how we win elections, and that's how we really grow this movement and get us to where we need to go.
And we've seen that here in Rhode Island also.
Absolutely. We're gonna take a quick break now. Joining us on the line in anticipation of Gary Johnson's visit is Libertarian warrior, doing the work of the yeoman's work of the Lord, if you will, across the country, Steve Kerbell. Folks, you're listening to the Coalition on the Worldwide Coalition Radio Network, coalitionradio.us, facebook.com/the Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are the saints that burn crosses. Some of those that work forces are the saints that burn crosses.
Now, back to the Coalition with Pat Ford on News Talk 630 and 99.7 FM, WPRO.
Are the saints that burn crosses.
The Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, and, of course, civilly disobedient radio. On the web at coalitionradio.us, where on the front page I've placed a link to a fascinating and yet insightful letter from Gary Johnson's Libertarian vice presidential nominee, Governor William Weld of Massachusetts, where he addresses an entire list of concerns that have been expressed by a variety of members across the Libertarian spectrum. A must-read, very articulate, very to the point, as is Will Weld, as if you've ever had a chance to listen to him speak. I'm joined, of course, in studio by the godfather of Rhode Island indie radio, of course, Tony Jones.
And, you know, most importantly to mention, two fat white guys in an AM radio station studio bobbing their heads to Rage Against the Machine. Rage Against the Machine is going to call in and complain.
Joining me on the line, of course, is Steve Kerbell, Libertarian warrior, former presidential candidate himself. He has endorsed the Gary Johnson campaign and is working in a leadership role to carry the message of Governor Johnson and the Libertarian movement nationwide. Steve, again, thanks for calling in. We're awaiting eagerly Mr. Johnson's call. But in the meantime, give us a little insight into, well, for folks, about how our convention works. We're different than those other guys, aren't we?
We are very different. It's much harder, if not impossible, to manipulate our situation. Now, you talk about, of course, the superdelegates you're hearing on the Democratic side and whatever shenanigans going on the Republican side doesn't apply to us. We're going to have about 1,000-ish delegates, and those delegates are going to choose the presidential nominee and the vice presidential nominee by a majority of the delegate votes. And so what's really exciting about this is each person that's making the trip to Orlando, Florida, where the convention will be this year, is obviously dedicated enough and concerned enough to make that trip all the way to Orlando. Some people all the way from Alaska, Hawaii, Washington, California, all over the place, long travel. These people are informed, they care, they have whatever viewpoint they have, they will make sure everyone's aware of it. And so when we pick our nominee, it's a much more stringent situation than it would be to try and manipulate the public vote as the Democrats and Republicans do. So by the time we come up with a nominee, you know that this person has been vetted, discussed, argued, and on we go. It's a great process. And when they're actually doing the presidential nomination, and same for vice presidential, if the person will get more than 50% of the delegate votes on the first ballot, it's over, we have a nominee. If not, then it just kind of goes down until it's a process of elimination until you end up with a nominee. And one of the things that's interesting about the Libertarian ballot, you talk about a party of principle, we have something on our ballot called NOTA, which is basically none of the above, which allows the delegates to say, we don't like anybody, bring up somebody else. And so it's a really, really good process.
And I think we talked about it. I think we talked about it a few weeks ago when Darryl Perry was in studio with us, but every delegate that heads down there is uncommitted.
Correct. That's right. And so there will be a debate. The nominating contest will be next Sunday. That's when we'll choose a nominee. But Saturday night, there's going to be a debate of the Libertarian candidates that have received enough delegate support to be allowed into the debate. And so it's a great, great process. And I think that by the time we have a nominee, I think that they will be a good representative of Libertarian values and a great spokesperson for the movement.
Now, at the same time, and as I was mentioning about Governor Weld, the vice presidential nominee is currently elected on a separate process, which mirrors the presidential process, correct?
That is correct. That's correct. Governor Weld is going to have to, as I've read him, I've heard him say, he has to earn his keep as well. He has to sing for his supper, I think is what he said. So basically, that he's going to have to go through the same process as Governor Johnson, assuming he is the nominee. And so it's not a slam dunk. I mean, we've got a couple of extremely qualified people, and anyone can end up with this nomination. I am just in hopes that it happens to be Governor Johnson's team, because I think that they are going to really be a fantastic representative and really hit the ball out of the park for us this year.
Why do you support Governor Johnson? Give us your stump speech, if you will.
I will. Okay. Well, here I look at it this way: we have a lot of really good people running for this nomination, but I've gotten to know Governor Johnson over the last few months, and of course I've seen his record for many years. And here's a man who, when he says something, he means it. He is not your consummate politician that will say whatever is convenient at the moment. When you look at his record as a governor, as he might mention to you, he was Governor Veto when he was a governor in New Mexico. He was not going to let any of these politicians slam anything through, that was going to be at the detriment of the constituents that he was elected to represent. And so he's basically a no-nonsense guy. He knows what needs to be done. He's not afraid to do it. And, and also not to mention the fact that if we put him forward, this is going to be the first time the United States really sees us. I mean, a lot of people have known about us for many years, but this is going to be the first time we are out there in the mainstream as likely a real alternative to Democrats and Republicans. And I think we put forth somebody with the amazing track record, running as a governor, a successful governor for 2 terms in a Democratic state, and he was a Republican at the time, but he was always been a Libertarian at heart, and I believe in registration for many years as well. But the reality is, we need to put forth somebody who's going to be very credible and represent the Libertarian Party as a real alternative instead of some fringe group that some people may see us as. So I think Governor Johnson is absolutely, without a doubt, the strongest person to represent us in 2016, and I can say that unequivocally.
And, as the state director here, it makes my job a little bit easier as I'm going around stumping, because we will, potentially have on paper the most qualified candidate of the big 3.
Absolutely true. Because if you look at our alternatives, it's if you really kind of step back, now they talk about us Libertarians being the only ones that are awake.
Right.
But the truth is, if you really look at who the other ones are putting up, there should be, Governor Johnson should win by a landslide if you're looking at actual qualifications for the job. So, and I'm hoping that the country will see this, and I am actually very much hoping that he becomes the next president of the United States.
Now, I think a lot of people find it interesting, and I'm not completely sure if you're in the loop on the potential lawsuit on the situation of getting Gary into the debates.
I am well aware of it. And what's exciting about that is, of course, now for those who are not aware of that, basically it's the Commission for Presidential Debate. Right. Is who monitors or who controls the presidential debates that everyone sees just before the election in November. And a lot of people don't know it's owned by the Democrats and Republicans. And
it's almost a chicken and egg situation where you need 15% to be in the debates, but you need to be in the debates to get 15%.
Well, right, and generally we've not been included in the polls, and so they want us to see that we're going to get 15% in the polls, but they don't include us in the polls. So how in the world are we going to get there? Well, that's why this year is so exciting. We've already seen a national poll, actually a couple so far, right. And it's got Governor Johnson in double digits before we've even started running. Yeah. So this is really, really exciting. But yeah, so basically that lawsuit is apparently it is run by Bruce Fine, who is the one who took down Nixon in Watergate, which is kind of cool. And at the same time, what this is going to do is it open up the playing field for anyone. Hopefully we can be successful with this, but it opens up the playing field for anyone who could actually win the presidency because of their ballot access to be included in those debates. And it's only right. You know, it's a great thing to do, and I think it was a great contribution to the nation. Yeah, and Governor Johnson was the honorary chairman of that group that was doing that. But so really, you know, I think that this is a long time coming, and I think that it's time for the Republicans and Democrats to be running scared.
Thank you, Steve. Keep up the good work.
Steve, thanks for joining us, and again, thanks for doing. Steve, thank you for being you.
And we'll see you in Orlando.
And we'll see you in a few days.
There. Very nice talking to you guys.
Folks, he's on the line now. The man, the legend, Governor Gary Johnson. We're going to take a very quick break. CoalitionRadio.us, Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio. We'll be right back.
Now, back to the Coalition with Pat Ford on News Talk 630 and 99.7 FM, WPRO.
We are back. The Coalition on the Worldwide Coalition Radio Network. CoalitionRadio.us, Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, and the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. Today's guest is a product of Minot, North Dakota, a graduate of the University of New Mexico. He worked his way through college as a handyman. Upon graduation, he founded Big J Enterprises, which eventually grew to become New Mexico's largest mechanical contractor with over 1,000 employees. Remarkably, Big J is still in business today. Imagine local industry supporting local hiring and economic growth, a stark contrast to the other presidential candidates.
Right.
In 1994, he entered politics, successfully running for governor of New Mexico, exercising his veto pen an astonishing 200 times in his first 6 months in office. He eventually became known as Governor Veto, with over 800 legislative and line item vetoes in 8 years. His legacy was stunning. No tax increases in 6 years. Shifting Medicaid to managed care, the construction of new prisons, the elimination of 1,200 state jobs, leaving the state with a $1.1 billion budget surplus. In 2012, he ran for the presidency of the United States, receiving a record 1.2 million votes. Advocating for a balanced federal budget, he proposed slashing government spending on entitlements and the elimination of the Federal Reserve. Often described as a classical liberal, his vision of our foreign policy is decidedly non-interventionist. His stance on social issues is based firmly in the roots of individual choice and liberty. It is a proud moment in coalition history to welcome Gary Johnson, Libertarian candidate for the presidency of the United States. Welcome, Governor Johnson.
Hey, great to be with you. And just, talking a little bit about my record as governor of New Mexico, really, it was just common sense. It wasn't the notion of we didn't fire anybody. It was just managing attrition. And at the end of my governorship, we had 1,200 fewer employees. And really, at the end of the day, it was all about common sense. Just best product, best service, lowest price. And in that context, look, government does try and do too much. And in that process, it taxes too much. And when it taxes too much, that's money out of your and my pocket that we could be spending on ourselves as opposed to the government. And then social issues, always coming down on the side of choice, individual freedom and liberty. And really, I think that's what's missing right now in this whole campaign. And there's just a terrific opportunity right now to actually be in the presidential debates, which I find really, beyond my wildest dreams that this can and is actually happening.
Governor Johnson, Tony Jones here, and for everybody listening, if you think you're getting impartial journalism today, I am Gary's state director here in Rhode Island, and I just want to thank you again for endorsing me when I ran for lieutenant governor in 2014. Governor Johnson, here in Rhode Island, 5% of the vote is a game changer for us as a state party. Any specific plans to help grow state parties, local affiliates, things of that nature?
I really think that, and of course you've all seen where Bill Weld has agreed to run for the vice president of the Libertarian Party. And by the way, I'm not the Libertarian nominee. I hope to be next weekend. I hope the Libertarian Party chooses Bill Weld. But at an absolute minimum, I see 5% all the way across the country and that ballot access is not an issue for the Libertarian Party in the next cycle. But I would not be doing this if I didn't think there was the opportunity to win. Mm-hmm. And I think what Bill Weld brings to this really is just kind of a good housekeeping seal of approval that this is for real. And if our names just appear in these national polls, look, if Mickey Mouse were the third name in a national poll, Mickey would be polling at 30%. But Mickey's not going to be on the ballot in all 50 states, and that's what's significant for the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian nominee, president, vice president, is going to be on the ballot in all 50 states.
Speaking of Governor Weld, you and your running mate share an interesting legacy. You have a firm, somewhat contentious, yet ultimately successful, productive relationship with an overwhelmingly Democratic legislature in your home state. How does that uniquely prepare you, that experience set, for dealing with today's congressional stalemate?
Well, just that as a Libertarian as president, I mean, the notion of challenging Republicans at what they're supposed to be good at, which is smaller government, which they are anything but.
Right.
And then how about challenging Democrats regarding what they're supposed to be good at? Look, let's get rid of mandatory sentencing. Let's end the drug war. Let's stop with these military interventions. All of those things, none of which they are accomplishing. So, Libertarian president, challenge both sides to make things better and bring everybody together in what really encompasses most people. Look, fiscally conservative, socially liberal. That's the makeup of most people, and that's the way we move forward and come together on all these issues.
Governor Johnson, coming in from Eric Palmieri, who is doing the yeoman's work here with me in Rhode Island for your campaign, he would like to know what government agencies or departments would you specifically like to see shut down and why?
Well, as President of the United States, at the end of the day, I get to sign or veto anything that Congress submits to me. I'm gonna promise to sign any elimination of any agency that Congress sends me. But okay, I have the bully pulpit, so I get to talk about agencies that I think should be abolished. The Department of Commerce, Housing and Urban Development, Department of Education. The Department of Education, everybody kind of cringes at that, but people don't realize that the Department of Education gives each state 11 cents out of every school dollar that every state spends. What people don't realize is that it comes with 15 cents worth of strings attached. That you have to, federal government says, you have to do A, B, C, and D. We're going to give you 11 cents to accomplish A, B, C, and D. Well, the reality is it costs 15 cents. It's really a negative to take federal educational dollars.
Right.
And I think people think the Federal Department of Education was established under George Washington, when the fact is it was established under Jimmy Carter. And tell me anything that's been value-added about the Federal Department of Education. Just one example, Department of Commerce. I mean, it's all about crony capitalism and advancing crony capitalism. It's all about rules and regulations and tariffs. Genuine free market may have its issues, but government control ends up being worse. And housing and urban development, I mean, they can share a gigantic role in this housing crisis in 2008. And come on, we've moved way beyond needing the federal government involved in affordable housing.
You talk about the fair tax. If you could just explain your support of the fair tax as both a concept and an actual exercise in taxation.
Well, as President of the United States, count on me to sign any sort of tax reduction. Count on me to sign anything that Congress proposes that's going to make taxes simpler, lower those taxes. But that said, what I think we really need to do is eliminate income tax, eliminate corporate tax. Because we would do that, we could abolish the IRS and replace, and hey, as President of the United States, if Congress abolishes income tax and corporate tax and the IRS and doesn't replace it with anything, I'm the guy to make that stick. But you know what? At the end of the day, they're not going to do that. But what they could do is they could replace it with a national consumption tax. And I suggest for everybody listening, check out the fair tax. And there is no fair tax, all right? There's no fair tax, but the fair tax proposal dots the I's and crosses the T's on how you would accomplish one federal consumption tax. If we had zero corporate tax in this country, tens of millions of jobs would get created in this country, because why would you start up or grow a business anywhere in the world other than the United States given a zero corporate tax rate?
I have about a 20-hour train ride to the convention in Orlando next week, and some of my reading material will be on the fair tax for my luxurious time in the seat. The kind of the ultimate libertarian question, your general views on states' rights, and should it be up to each state to legalize prostitution and the war on drugs, maybe legalize gambling, things of that nature?
Well, yes, all the above. And a great example right now is Obama saying to the Obama administration saying to the states, look, you need to provide a transgender bathroom. Mm-hmm. So, and if you don't provide that transgender bathroom, we're going to take away federal funding. Well, gee, now that 15 cents that I talked about, now it's going to be 16 cents that it costs the states. States' rights, I mean, it is all about states. 50 laboratories of innovation and best practice, and the federal government does have a role, but it's constitutional. It's to protect us against individuals that would do us harm, individuals, groups, corporations, foreign governments, but the federal government has gone way over its mandate. If we would have never adopted the 17th Amendment to the Constitution, which allows for the direct election of U.S. senators, we would not be in the spending and deficit mode that we're in right now, because U.S. senators would have been appointed by state legislatures, and those U.S. senators would have never gotten sideways with state legislatures, starting with taking more money from the states than the states themselves would have been able to retain and spend as they saw fit.
So that kind of dovetails perfectly into my next question, which is about general monetary policy and your support or non-support of the End the Fed and the Audit the Fed movements that are kind of currently taking place, gaining steam.
If back to being president, I'm going to sign or veto legislation. Mm-hmm. If Congress sends me legislation to abolish the Federal Reserve, I will sign off on that. But you know what? At the end of the day, they're not going to do it. It's just not going to happen. But it seems to me that we should audit the Federal Reserve. We should find out where these assets are. And I think that the reason why it hasn't happened is I think it would send shockwaves all over the world regarding just the assets that they are holding and how propped up the system is by the Federal Reserve.
One of our regular listeners, John Fennessy, has a question for you. Particularly with regard to Mr. Wells' letter this afternoon, he cites Friedrich Hayek's Road to Serfdom as one of his favorite tomes. Do you have a particular political philosophy, particular book? Is there something that you refer to or that influences you regularly?
Well, my favorite book is I did read The Road to Serfdom by Hayek, and here was the takeaway I got from Hayek. The takeaway I got from Hayek is that as policymakers, as politicians, you should never, ever rule out potentially being able to make things better. And does it go as far as it should? And this is Hayek talking. You know, is it ideal? No, but you should not, as a politician, as a policymaker, you should never shirk the responsibility of always wanting to make things better. That was my big takeaway from Hayek.
Ultimately, what do you see as the hot button issue in this election? Clearly, with the tragedy yesterday in Egypt, with Egypt Air, that flight going down, international affairs have, reasserted themselves in the presidential election. Do you see that as the hot button issue? And what's your take, if you will, on Americans' role overseas?
Well, first of all, Congress has shirked its responsibility to step up and actually hold hearings and debate over what our foreign policy should be. They have shrunk that responsibility and given it to the executive, and they have given it to the military. And that has us in the pickle that we're in, which is, 69 treaties with various countries in the world where we're going to come to the military assistance of 69 countries, and none of this has really happened with Congress. It's happened executively. With regard to military interventions, wouldn't it be good to have a skeptic as President of the United States with the belief, and I being the skeptic, with the belief that these military interventions at the end of the day have unintended consequences of making things worse, not better. The fact that we militarily intervene with ground troops, the fact that we militarily intervene dropping bombs or flying drones that are killing thousands of people, look, this is making things worse, not better. And the biggest threat in the world right now, today, in my opinion, is the fact that North Korea, at some point, is going to have intercontinental ballistic missiles that work.
Right.
And so diplomacy is a hill. We should be joining hands with China. They're the first ones that recognize this threat from North Korea, and they should be dealing with it. They need to step up. Arguably, the Koreans could be unified. We could get our troops out of South Korea. What do we have troops in South Korea for? South Korea is more than able to defend itself against North Korea, and our troops in South Korea really are an affront to China. And at the end of the day, this is, in my opinion, the biggest threat existing in the world.
Mm-hmm. We're going to take a quick break. Folks, you're listening to The Coalition on the Worldwide Coalition Network. CoalitionRadio.us, Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio. Of course, joining us remotely, Governor Gary Johnson, presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party of the United States. Stay tuned. When we get back, we're going to talk immigration.
America, this. Now, back to The Coalition with Pat Ford on News Talk 630 and 99.7 FM, WPRO.
And we're back. The Coalition on the Worldwide Coalition Radio Network. Joining us remotely, having just attended a personal service, Gary Johnson, Libertarian candidate for the presidency of the United States. Again, Gary, this is advocacy journalism, so we're the two fanboys here.
We have your state director, the chairman of the party, and about 99% of the Rhode Island delegation all in this room, and there's only two guys.
So when we last left, we broached the immigration question. I wonder if you could explain, and forgive me if you will digress for a second, one of the constant confusions, if you will, in the Northeast with the Libertarian Party is we're often branded as Republican extremists, right-wing extremists, nationalists, I mean, you name it, Tea Party people. Explain for you, if you will, the Libertarian vision on immigration.
Well, let me describe for you, and of course, the Libertarian position. I'm running to represent libertarians, but here's what I have to say about immigration. First of all, immigration, really a good thing. Let's embrace immigration. We're a country of immigrants. We should make it as easy as possible to come into this country and work as possible. So we should issue work visas that should entail a background check and a social security card. That we have a moving line to get across the border. Will Mexicans comply with a moving line? Anybody coming into the country comply with a moving line? Absolutely. But the notion of deporting 8 billion illegal immigrants really is misinformed. It is wrong. With regard to the 11 million illegal immigrants that are here in this country right now, look, make it easy to get a work visa. Anybody that's in this country illegally can walk in the door, and as long as they've been law-abiding, they can pick up that work visa. We should also establish a pathway to citizenship. Building a fence or a wall across the border is absolutely wrong-headed. They are not taking jobs that U.S. citizens want, and it is not an issue of lower pay unless it's an issue of language, and they are the first ones that understand that. They are the cream of the crop when it comes to workers. They are not murderers and rapists. Statistically, they commit less crime than U.S. citizens. And doesn't that just make sense?
And that's coming from your perspective uniquely as having been an 8-year governor of a border state, isn't it?
That is my perspective, and I have to tell you, it is contrary to everything right now that Donald Trump is saying. It's xenophobic, and as Bill Weld pointed out, really, it's a night of broken glass. We're going to start knocking down doors in search of 11 million illegal immigrants, because essentially that is what's being espoused. That is not this country. That is not, I don't think, anyone's vision of this country.
I believe Governor Weld used the term, and it was quite stunning up here in the Northeast. He used the term "crystal knocked," and folks,
which is the night of broken glass in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the night that many were killed.
We've only got a couple of minutes left, and again, Gary Johnson's calling in from the road, and we appreciate you taking time from your personal time to do this. We're grateful to have your presence up here in New England. If you will, in the couple minutes that we have left, the two bogeymen, if you will, of the third-party movement, if you could just explain what you consider your libertarian vision, and then, of course, the quote-unquote, and I'm using air quotes now, the wasted vote syndrome.
Well, wasted vote is voting for somebody that you don't believe in. And here's what's so exciting is I do believe that if I'm the presidential nominee, I do believe if Bill Weld is the vice presidential nominee, I think that we give a whiff of, gee, these guys could win. And if that happens, anything is possible. But you are right. It has always been the lesser of two evils. Here's an opportunity to vote for people that you actually believe in, and the opportunity absolutely exists to win this election. And you know what? Win the election. If I'm in the presidential debate, if Bill Weld is in the vice presidential debate, that means that we're representing 25, 30 million people. And do you think that the eventual winner is going to just blow off what it is that we're saying? No. They are politically adept, and they're going to have to pay more than just lip service to garner that support, because they're going to want that support going forward. So it's win-win no matter how you get it.
If you could, leave us with what your vision and what your definition of the word libertarian and what the movement really means.
Well, look, economic freedom, personal freedom, and let's stop being the policemen of the world. Let's provide ourselves with an impenetrable national defense as opposed to offense.
We've got about 10 seconds left, Governor.
It's pretty darn simple.
Governor Gary Johnson, Libertarian Party candidate for the President of the United States, someone who clearly takes it personally.
And we'll see you in Orlando.
What I thought was the new millennium. It's 1984. Mr. Roll up from the grave.
WEAN FM Wakefield Peacedale. WPRO Providence, a Cumulus station.
Preakness surprise Taliban takedown. I'm Michael Toscano. It's over, the 141st running of the Preakness Stake.